Welcome to This Explainer. Okay, today we're tackling a critical business risk that honestly every executive and board member absolutely needs on their radar. Let's just forget what you know about the typical smash and grab cyber attack, right? We're not talking about a brick through a window here. It's more like a meticulously planned, long con corporate heist. We're talking about advanced persistent threats, or APTs. Our goal today is to translate this highly technical threat into, clear, actionable business risk so you can actually guide your organization's defense effectively. Let's get into it.
So, here's our roadmap for today. We'll look at the anatomy of an APT, the attack playbook they use, how they hide in plain sight, profiling the adversary, and finally, defending your enterprise.
All right, part one, the anatomy of an APT.
So let's break this acronym down to really understand what we're up against. Every single word in advanced persistent threat tells you exactly who the adversary is. Advanced? Well, that means they have incredibly high technical expertise. They aren't just buying cheap, off-the-shelf malware. They're developing custom tools or exploiting zero-day vulnerabilities. Persistent means they're definitely not looking for a quick payout. They are entirely mission-focused, often taking direct orders, and they have the extreme patience required to sit silently in your network for months, or literally years, just collecting intelligence. And finally, threat reminds us that these are highly motivated, incredibly well-funded actors. We're talking state-sponsored groups or massive criminal syndicates. They target high-value entities, and they are after your intellectual property, financial records, or strategic communications.
To put that in perspective, think about traditional cyber attacks, like a standard ransomware hit. Those are noisy, chaotic, right? They just want to lock your systems, extort you as fast as possible, and get out. An APT, though, is the long con. Their primary goal is espionage and data theft. They operate in complete silence. They are laser-focused on prolonged dwell time. That's the amount of time they spend totally undetected inside your network. They want to observe your operations, map out your entire infrastructure, and quietly siphon off your most valuable assets, all without ever tripping a single alarm.
Moving on to part two, the APT attack playbook.
These guys don't just randomly bash down the digital door. They follow a highly methodical playbook. According to Microsoft Security, APT campaigns unfold in these very coordinated phases. First up is reconnaissance and planning. They're actually studying your vendors, your personnel, and your weak points before they ever make a move. Second is the initial compromise. This is often done through spear phishing targeting specific executives, maybe even you, or exploiting unpatched vulnerabilities. Step 3, they establish a foothold. They install backdoors or create new user accounts so they can always get back in if one door gets shut. Fourth, they escalate privileges, essentially stealing administrative credentials to get to the really sensitive data. Fifth is lateral movement. They quietly navigate from system to system, bypassing your internal defenses. And finally, data exfiltration or disruption. They silently steal your IP or get ready for a massive disruption. It is, quite literally, a deliberate step-by-step siege of your corporate infrastructure.
Which brings us to part three, hiding in plain sight. And here's a pretty terrifying question for any business leader. Why does your standard, hugely expensive corporate antivirus software often fail to catch these groups? How exactly do these threat actors achieve that massive dwell time we just talked about? I mean, how do they sit inside a Fortune 500 network for a whole year without a single red light flashing on the IT dashboard?
Well, the secret is a technique called living off the land, or LOTL. Let's strip away the jargon here. Instead of bringing in custom malware that your security software is trained to recognize and immediately block, the attackers simply use your organization's own legitimate IT tools against you. They use native system administrative processes, things like PowerShell and Windows environments, to move around and execute commands. Because they're using the exact same tools your own IT department uses every single day, their malicious activity is completely camouflaged as normal daily administrative traffic. And to top it off, they actively work to disable security logging so they leave absolutely no trace. It really is the ultimate defense evasion.
Now, this isn't just some academic theory. Global intelligence agencies, we're talking CISA, the NSA, the FBI, and international cyber centers, recently issued joint guidance specifically warning critical infrastructure organizations about these invisible living-off-the-land techniques. Listen, when the world's premier intelligence agencies issue joint warnings that state-sponsored actors are using these exact methods to bypass basic endpoint security, that elevates this to a definitive boardroom issue.
All right, part 4, profiling the adversary.
Let's ground all this theory in reality by looking at a couple of specific APT groups and the tangible warning signs they leave behind. We're going to profile two well-known groups based on industry and academic intelligence. First, take a look at APT-1, This group has been operating since at least 2006, and their specialty is stealing commercial and industrial data from U.S. enterprises. The average dwell time for APT-1 in a victim's network was 1 year. But in one specific case, their dwell time peaked at a staggering 1,764 days. Think about that. That is almost 5 years inside a corporate network undetected. On the flip side, we have APT-29. They're characterized by extreme patience, and they heavily target cloud and identity systems. To hide their tracks, they use tactics like timestamping, which is where they modify file timestamps to make their malicious files look as old as the operating system itself. They also route traffic through compromised residential IP addresses, so to your security team, they just look like normal employees working remotely from home.
But the good news is they aren't completely ghosts. CrowdStrike has actually identified key symptoms of an APT attack, and these are the concrete red flags you absolutely should be asking your security teams about. For instance, are we seeing unusual late-night high-level administrative logins? Is there a widespread presence of backdoor Trojans? And most importantly, are there unexpected data bundles or uncharacteristic outbound information flows? Like, if there's suddenly a massive database operation moving huge quantities of data at 3 a.m., yeah, that is a prime symptom that data has been amassed and is being staged for exfiltration.
Finally, Part 5, Defending Your Enterprise. So what does this all mean, and how do we actually fight back? Let's outline some empowering, high-level strategic directives you can immediately take back to your boardroom. Intelligence agencies and security experts basically all agree on one thing. There is no foolproof single software silver bullet to prevent APTs. Real defense requires a layered strategy. First, you need to implement out-of-band, centralized logging that is write once, read many. This just ensures that even if attackers do compromise your system, they physically cannot erase the logs to cover their tracks. Second, enforce network segmentation and least privilege. If an attacker breaches one department, they definitely shouldn't have a free pass to roam the entire corporate network. Third, continuous patch management. You have to close the vulnerabilities that you use for that initial compromise. Fourth, employ managed detection and response to actively hunt for hidden threats, rather than just passively waiting for an automated alarm to go off. And finally, rigorous employee training to combat the spear phishing that so often kicks off this entire playbook.
I want to leave you with this final, provocative thought. If an advanced persistent threat group breached your corporate network exactly 1 year ago today, using legitimate administrative tools and quietly sitting in the background, would your security team actually know it today? I highly encourage you to take that question and the strategic concepts we've covered in this explainer directly to your IT leadership, because proactive threat hunting really does start with asking the hard questions. Thank you so much for joining me, and stay secure.